welcome in to the Rock Talk Studio, the podcast that answers the question, is this rock and roll book or documentary worth your time and money? And today I'm going to be taking a look at a reissue of the Beatles film, Let It Be, which I'm going to review, rate, and determine if this doc is for you. And then, as always, I'll jump into a bunch of book buzz and documentary news you don't want to miss, including projects from a really diverse group this week. We've got news from Journey, Moby Grape, Lollapalooza, and the one and only Michael McDonald, to name a few. I'm your host, Big Rick. Join me for an exclusive look into what's hitting the shelves and screens, and get ready to rock your reading and viewing list. Last year, I watched 8 hours of the masterpiece documentary Get Back that was put together by Peter Jackson from outtakes from the filming of the Beatles movie Let It Be. 8 hours, and I loved every minute of it. To me, it's the best behind-the-scenes documentary I've ever seen. And now, after decades of bootlegs, rare viewings, and a bunch of hype, we finally get the release of the Beatles' 1970s documentary Let It Be, the film the way it was originally presented, but this time it's been restored by Peter Jackson's production company. Real smart move by starting the doc with a conversation between Peter Jackson and Lindsay Hogg. It made a lot of sense. This needed a little setup, and as the two guys sat down and talked back and forth, it really put it into perspective, the historical significance of this film, or at least it reminded me about it again, and it really kind of revved me up to want to see it, because I really wasn't that fired up about it because of Get Back and how powerful that was and how much I enjoyed watching that documentary. But 5 minutes later, I'm lost in Let It Be, seeing it as the film it was initially intended to be. Back with the boys, hammering out the songs, being creative, and back just marveling at the amazing talent and interaction between the four of them. The new restoration of the film is noticeable. Everything looks really good, really clean, and it sounds great. The sound is amazing. Watching the film kind of made me wonder why it wasn't such a big deal when it first came out. It just kind of seemed to get passed over. There was so much going on during the Beatles' career there at the end of their time together. But if you just put this out now at a point in someone's career, I think it would have been a huge film. Jackson is quoted as saying, "I always thought that Let It Be is needed to complete the Get Back story. Michael Lindsay Hogg was unfailingly helpful and gracious while I made Get Back," he continued. "It's only right that his original movie has the last word, looking and sounding far better than it did in 1970. And I had to wonder about this. Is this just Jackson's way of paying respect to Lindsay Hogg? Possibly. Let It Be is a historical recording of a major moment in rock and roll history. And I really got that while I was rewatching that. It's just amazing what was captured and what they were doing at this time. The interplay between John and Paul and George and Ringo as they come to, air quotes, work every day. It's just fascinating. And you get to watch as they create these timeless songs. It's a magical moment. And I really enjoyed this shorter version after watching the 8 hours of everything that Peter Jackson put together. It was nice to get kind of a compacted version of this amazing film. Let It Be is directed by Michael Lindsay Hogg. It runs 1 hour and 21 minutes. And my review is a little short today compared to what I usually do for books and docs because of the rating. And the rating is coming up next. I always rate the film or the doc. And this film is going to get a rating I've never given out before. In the year and a half of rating books and docs, this is a first, and it's coming up next. Okay, for the first time ever, I have 2 ratings for one documentary, and it's really the only way I can really do a rating of this film justice, and that is to actually do 2 ratings. So let's start there. The first rating, I got to tell you my rating system. My rating system is a 1 through 4 system. So if you're new to this, the 1 is a front row center. It doesn't get any better than that. A very unique documentary, something that is doesn't come around very often. Something that's a no miss. Don't miss. That's a 1 front row. A 2 rating is a floor seat. Really good, highly recommended. I would recommend that to anybody. Check it out. Must see. 2 floor seat. 3 is a loge seat. And that's not bad. It's okay. It could be a recommended, or it could be a slight pass. So that's a 3 loge seat, and a 4, you're in the nosebleeds, baby. So let's jump back into the review here. The first rating is going to go to those who have seen the Get Back documentary. As I mentioned, I fall into that camp. So if you've seen Get Back, is watching Let It Be really worth it? That's the main question that I had even before I decided I wanted to take a look at this and review it on the show. And that's where I give this film a 3, a loge seat. It's not the best loge seat ever. I can't say the film is a nosebleed, because it's definitely not that. It's way too good to be that, but I can't give it a strong rating after watching Get Back. Get Back had this film and so much more. Get Back filled in a ton of blanks and documents everything that was happening with the band at the time. You can't show me everything and then show me some of everything and expect me to think it's better. There's just no way. I think it could have been considered better if you look at it as just a film. Let it be the film. So if you've seen Get Back, it's a weak loge seat. It's a weak 3. Second rating, and this rating goes out to the people who have never seen Get Back, and I give that rating a 2, a floor seat. You've got to see it. You've got to check this out if you've never seen it before, because it's great. It's a really well done piece on the end of the Beatles' career. I highly recommend it if you've never seen Get Back before. I could see anyone going and watching Get Back after seeing this and then really getting the full picture, really giving even more appreciation for what was filmed and what was going on here. But if you've already seen it, to me, that's where the challenge of spending your time watching the release of Let It Be the movie. And of course, if you're a Beatles fan, that's a wash, because Let It Be is great. It's an hour and 20 minutes of Beatles at that time. You've got to see it, and you're probably going to love it. I've got a bunch more book and documentary reviews and recommendations for you, and that is in the archives of the show. A year and a half now of a ton of books and documentaries. I've got recently talking about a really great book called Drums and Demons about Jim Gordon. I really highly recommend everybody go check that out. You can find that in episodes, 2 episodes back. I just reviewed the Geddy Lee book. There's a book about 20 female badasses in rock and roll talking about feminism. That's a very unique and a great book. So dig back into the archives. You can check out a lot of great stuff and a lot of great recommendations. I've also got another really good recommendation for a podcast. And the podcast is called The Blues Guitar Show. It's a show by Ben Martin, who is a great guitar player and has taught me a lot. I love this show. You've got teaching about guitars. You've got talk about guitars, focusing on blues guitar, but also rock stuff too. There's recording tips, there's theory tips, there's gear tips, there's interviews, a really cool show about learning and about just guitar in general. Here's a trailer from the show. Let's take a listen.
Hey everybody, Ben from the Blues Guitar Show podcast here. Are you a frustrated guitarist wishing you could play great songs and awesome sounding solos but just don't know where to start? I'm on a mission to get you into the nitty-gritty of playing blues, rock and country guitar. The Blues Guitar Show podcast comes out every Monday with a new guitar lesson. Some weeks we cover a classic song, sometimes a riff, sometimes a solo or theory concept, always with the mind of playing great music with great people. I've had everyone on the show from heavy hitters like The Who to rockabilly legends, all giving advice and demos to help you on your guitar playing journey. Check out the Blues Guitar Show podcast today, anywhere that you find podcasts. See you there.
That's Ben and his great podcast, The Blues Guitar Show. Head on over to any of your directories where you get your podcast and check it out. Going to kick off the next segment here with a bunch of news about rock and roll books that are coming out. I do have one documentary that I'm going to talk about, and I'm also going to do an update on a documentary that I talked about last episode. I've got some new information that just came out, but I'm going to start this one with talking about a new book about Journey. It's called Journey Worlds Apart by Nick DeRiso. This one is 351 pages on everything you ever wanted to know about this band. This thing is thorough. It is a very, very well-written, thorough read on the band. It's an unconventional book because of the way it reads. It is a chronological telling of the band's history, but it's broken up by artist profiles, album reviews, discussion on other people that are around the band at the time, managers, producers, concert promoters. So you get a really flushed out history of the band and all the people that played a part in their history. And there's a lot of different bands and a lot of different people that came in and out of the Journey story. And the depth of the story really surprised me. So many moving parts of this ever-changing band, and it's not just the Steve Perry years that are looked at. You get every lineup explored and all the many tendrils on who played with who, the Babies, Bad English, Steve Smith's band Vital Information. So if you're a Journey fan, this one is packed full of a lot of great things. You get these add-ons, DeRiso calls them nuggets, charts about how the records are doing, how they did, unfinished or different proposals of artwork. That was really cool. Promotional stuff, promotional period. Again, if you're a Journey fan, I would say you have to own this book. It's that well written for a Journey fan. And even a casual fan is going to find a ton of information about the long career of one of rock's most successful bands, Journey Worlds Apart. This next book that just came out has a really interesting twist to it. The book is called What a Fool Believes, and the twist is that it was written with actor-comedian Paul Reiser. And of course, it's Michael McDonald's memoir. It clocks in at 323 pages. It covered McDonald's career and his work with Steely Dan, of course, the Doobie Brothers, and his solo work also. The Michael McDonald story is out now. I read a really interesting story about a chapter in his life in the Doobie Brothers book a couple years ago. It reminded me of that. The book came out in 2021, I think it was, right before I started the podcast, called Long Train Running, the Doobie Brothers book. And it was a really good book. So if you're a Doobie Brothers fan, I wanted to throw this in there. Check this book out, Long Train Running. Really interesting information about Michael McDonald and, of course, the story of the Doobie Brothers. And if you're a Michael McDonald fan, check out this book, What a Fool Believes. This next book caught my eye because it's about an influential artist that I feel doesn't get a lot of recognition. There has been really a lot written or documented about him. And because of the life he led, I'm really interested in checking this book out. And it's the first biography of the legendary 60s cult musician Skip Spence. Spence was in the band Moby Grape. He was in Quicksilver Messenger Service and Jefferson Airplane. He had a very influential career that was marred by drugs and poor mental health. He was only 52 when he passed. Spence lived a wild life. He actually grew up as a ward of the state. He was a rock star. He was a soldier, and eventually became a really popular cult figure. Spence's story includes tales of the 60s, the Hells Angels, Columbia Records, and artists like Janis Joplin, Neil Young, Jimi Hendrix, Santana, and B.B. King, to name a few. The book is called Weighted Down. I think there's a lot of potential with this book. I think it's a really cool story about a very interesting character, Skip Spence. I'm going to be checking this one out. I've got one more for you, and it's a documentary. There is a new documentary, and it is out right now, that tells the story of a festival that was born in the summer of 1991, and what started as a farewell tour for Jane's Addiction rose to the famous Lollapalooza tour. And this new doc is a 3-part doc called Lala. It explores the rise of the festival that literally changed music. That original lineup was crazy. 9 Inch Nails, Body Count, Living Colour, the Rollins Band, Susie and the Banshees, and of course, Jane's Addiction. I remember seeing that first tour, and I think one about 5 years later, when it kind of grown past just the cool kids going to it. Perry Farrell contributed to the doc. And this is one I don't want to miss, and it looks like I'll be featured as a spotlight title with a full review and a review in an upcoming episode. There's just too much to unpack with the history of this festival. I'm really looking forward to this documentary. Again, it's out now, called Lala. Before I check out, I want to leave you with an update on a documentary that I was talking about in the last episode. And that's the new documentary about Stevie Van Zant called Disciple. At the time I did the podcast, there was no release date on when the documentary was coming out, but that has changed and it's coming out soon. It's coming out June 22nd on HBO, so we'll be able to see that real soon. And I'm really interested in this documentary because of the book that he wrote. 2021 it came out. It was called Unrequited Infatuations. Little Steven's memoir really changed my mind about Little Steven. I didn't know a lot about him. Of course, I knew the E Street Band stuff, and of course I knew Syl of Sopranos, but there's so much more to his character. He became such an activist, and what he has done for rock and roll, his appreciation, his love for it, is tremendous. And I can't wait to see this doc. I really hope it does this guy justice. Little Steven, Disciple, coming out June 22nd. Thanks for tuning in. Love talking rock and roll and getting a chance to recommend a few titles for you. Just because the episode is over doesn't mean the conversation is. Join me over on Instagram or Threads or YouTube for more book and doc talk. All right, tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road. We'll see you next time in the Rock Talk studio.